Side panel, and I know we've already done this. Great. Okay, so now step one, main stage content. Where are your images? I've got images. They're in Flickr, and it's called Map Journal. And I'm going to load albums. Again, be organized about your content out there, whether it's videos or text or something, because you want to put these in folders so that you won't have a problem finding things. Now, in this case, I'm going to look for Map Journal, and I'm going to look for number 10 here. And you can see I've got a lot of content. Here it is, Workshop 10. Okay, very cool. Now I'm going to pick a photo from there for my sustainable ag theme, and I'm going to go to next, and I'm just going to put photo here in the interest of time. And okay, now I've got frame 1, feeding the planet. Here's where it gets exciting, and that is if I go to my slides here now, I'm going to go to add a section, and I'm going to call it current crop yields. Yep, so now add section, and it's going to be called current crop yields. You see where I'm going with this, right, folks? This time I'm going to use a map instead of an image. This is where the power of ArcGIS Online comes in. Select a web map, and then I'm going to look for story map workshop feeding. This is where tags and metadata are important. You want to name these things so you can be able to find them later on. So, okay, select a map. And it's not my content because it's not my own organization in this case. It's going to be an ArcGIS Online, and then story map workshop feeding. Oh, look at that. There they are. So it's right there. And this is where you can really get into some detail. I don't want the map default. I want custom configuration. I want to customize my experience. So way over here, I want current crop yields notes, and I want the elevation hill shade. I don't want any of this other stuff. I don't want lakes, as cool as lakes are. So I'm going to turn off that. See what I mean? So whatever your map can be, like 10 map layers inside your map. And you can say, I want this one on, I want this one off, etc. So I'm going to save map content, and then, great. Do I want a legend? Sure. What's not to love? Okay, I want an overview map. Next, and then map. Okay. Nice. So you see now we've got two things in just 5 minutes. We've got a title, a builder. We've got some settings that you probably expect we'll be able to change the colors, change the logo, change the map extent, and then the second section, I've got my interactive web map on crop yields. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to go further, but I hope that little dipping a toe into the waters of a map journal will get you thinking, gosh, I completely understand where you're going there, Joseph. So again, I've got these in these slides. I have you then look at a couple of map journals. So since we just built a map journal, I have you look at a couple of others. In this case, the Elwha River might be of interest to you folks because you're all about 3D representations of the planet and so on at Lincoln Institute. And one of the reasons why I like this one, it's all about a very controversial removal of 2 dams in a river in Washington State. Another reason why I like this one is because it uses a looping video at the beginning to kind of draw your attention, thinking about the communication whole aspect, and it gives you a little story about, okay, this is a combination journal and a cascade, so you get this interactive, immersive experience, and here's the 3D scene. So think about, I've got a 3D scene of, in this particular case, where's that watershed? I can interact with it if I want to, so it's a story map, but at each point, I can actually interact with this. And depending on what the creator of the map lets me do, I can, get pop-ups. I can get more information about features. So that is the map journal and the cascade. Side accordion, I have you might like this, it's kind of fun, a public art project for that activity. Boots of Wimberley, Texas. These boots are made for walking. So that's the boot activity. And when you're done, it's going to look like this. You're going to have some side accordion things in it and a map of these cowboy boots turned into an art project. Then I have you build a tabbed story map, and this time I tried to vary these things. So in the tabbed story map, I actually have you build it with spreadsheets. So this is a sports theme, but think outside the box. It could be anything. I've got sports teams in this baseball tournament, junior college baseball tournament. Then you map each one of these spreadsheets and build a story map from it. So then we get into method 3, which is the configurable method. And this is what I used to create this Brugge, Belgium story map, which is a short list story map with these images. And as I indicated earlier, as you pan and zoom, in this particular case, you only see, notice how it's changing on the right or on the left side there. So now I only see the tower, and now I see a couple of things that are inside this map extent. See what I mean? Also, I've got tabs in there. So I built this for a geography conference I attended there as a sort of a proof of concept. And also, I've got a couple of other things. I've got some pop-ups in there, like this, and that was totally possible. I actually digitized these lines and these polygons inside ArcGIS Pro. So again, if you've got additional GIS tools, you can combine these. They're all part of the same platform. Very cool. All right, so in closing then, quiz time. Story map journals can only access one map, true or false? You folks are good. You, ustedes, vous, tú. Yes, you're exactly right. It is false. Story map tours can only access one map, but journals can access multiple web maps, which is one of the advantages of journals. So we created a map tour and a map journal today. Once you create a story map, you can delete the ArcGIS Online map behind it, true or false?
False.
Yeah, I kind of worded that a little bit tricky. It wasn't intentional, but you can delete it. It's physically possible, but you should not delete it. Yeah, you can go into ArcGIS Online and completely delete that, but then when you open your story map, it's going to say, where's your underlying map? So you're going to have broken links appear. So you should not delete the ArcGIS Online map. Story maps and collections, I highly encourage you to look at the Digital Humanities. It gives you all sorts of wonderful examples. And then this last one here, Speaking the Language of Science Using Story Maps, that's from our chief scientist, Dawn Wright, Dr. Dawn Wright. She's got a ongoing, updated speaking like, how do we communicate science through story maps? So you might find that valuable as well. And I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but no shortage of where do you go from here? How do I keep moving forward? I mentioned a couple things earlier, the GeoNet zone for story maps, how to use photos and different places in story maps that I've written, and got some other things there. We've got a MOOC called Do-It-Yourself Geo Apps that you might be interested in. That's a free, as all of our MOOCs are, free, 6 weeks long, fun, rigorous, challenging, but do-it-yourself geo apps. It's not all story maps. We use things like the web app builder and some other things that you might be interested in that course, but might be helpful. All right, folks, I'm all yours. What issues, concerns, questions?
I had a quick question.
You have? Yes.
It's Michael.
Hi, Michael.
I was wondering, when we're using the online, it mentioned that we have 100 credits a user and they're consumable, but I don't have any understanding of how they get consumed.
Good question. Yeah, so, okay. First of all, credits. As other tools that you're using nowadays, Salesforce.com, your own timesheets that you fill out or whatever. Almost all this stuff is migrated to the cloud nowadays, hasn't it? And so that being said, okay, if we're going to continue to be able to do the things that we want to do and we're not actually physically, I don't have a box here, but we're not delivering boxes of software anymore, right? So how do we keep the organization running? We've got to have some sort of system in place where when we serve data, we don't have just a bunch of servers that are sitting around underneath people's desks. We're actually using, a rigorous infrastructure, the Microsoft cloud, the Amazon cloud, to back up all of this and to serve the data. So when you think about, Boston MTA, right? Well, let me tell you a story about a man named Charlie. Okay, the point is that, major organizations have their infrastructure and their systems with this ArcGIS Online structure. So we have to buy server space there, and so we have to figure out how do we charge for that, basically. So we have these credits. And so how are credits consumed? Making story maps does not really storing stuff really doesn't consume credits. It's the geocoding that consumes most of the credits. So you got a bunch of points that you want to map. That consumes a little bit of credits. When you're doing analysis in ArcGIS Online, that consumes some credits. When you're doing like overlay buffer, proximity analysis, routing, there's a little button there when you're running those analysis tools that lets you estimate the number of credits. So it says show credits. And from time to time, I look at that. And every time I do, I'm in education, so I'm not doing anything, as rigorous as what you folks are doing, but it's like 0.1 credits, 2.2 credits. It's just tiny fractions. Sure, if you're going to geocode every water well in Massachusetts, yeah, there's going to be some credits consumed. But once it's up there and you're doing a little bit of analysis on it, it's not going to be that much. We don't have a list of every conceivable, but we do have a couple of resources about what consumes credits that go into it a little more deeply than me. But basically think about geocoding tables of locations and getting them mapped, and also running some analysis. Those are the things that actually consume it. The stuff that we've done today in story mapping, I probably consumed 0.01 credit in my map tour that I made. It's just a storage of an image, and actually my images are out on Flickr. So again, it's the geocoding and the analysis.
Thank you.
You bet.
There's also a microphone next to you.
So what do you? Yeah, I'd love to hear what you folks are kind of thinking about in terms of what you might want to do with this. But yeah, go ahead.
In order for you to embed a story map onto your website, I would assume that you have to maintain an ArcGIS Online profile. I just want to confirm that.
In order to store your story maps on your own website, and then you kind of faded there.
Yeah, to embed story maps on your website, it is assumed that you have to maintain your own ArcGIS profile. Is that correct? Like you have to be in the ArcGIS environment, obviously, to be able to maintain that.
In order to make changes in the future?
Maybe not even changes, but in order for it to even be function. Is that correct?
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So, yeah. So the example I showed of the Brugge, Belgium, Bruges. It's kind of a bilingual area, right? They got the Dutch and the French pronunciations. Anyway, but that, yeah, the JavaScript files to run the maps and some of my content, I actually have it on my own website, but I don't have all the services, the map services. I don't have, my own server. Okay, I've got a website, so that it's still pointing to the ArcGIS infrastructure, if you know what I mean. So yes, that all is to say that if you create a map with your Lincoln account or with a developer account, if that account is not around anymore, your story map is not around anymore. So yes, very good point. You have to have access. You have to have that account for those layers to exist somewhere. Mm-hmm. Because that account is tied to your organizational name, and also how you access it is you log in with your own sign-in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just like anything else. It's like if you got rid of your Google Docs, your Google account, right? Your stuff wouldn't be there anymore. Your Flickr account, etc.
Yeah, makes complete sense. I just wanted to clarify until the point.
Well, folks, keep those questions coming. I'm conscious of the time, though. We're right at the 90 minutes, And I appreciate, if you've got things to do, autographs to sign, places to go, I totally understand. Now, if you have a couple questions and you want me to stick around, I'm happy to do that. But I didn't want people to feel pressured, like, oh, Joseph's going over time. So you know how to get a hold of me for those of you that need to bolt. And I'm very happy to be with you all today. And I salute the great things that you're doing. I mean, I wouldn't have written this in my data blog about you all if I didn't have such respect for the things that you're doing. So keep up the good work. We need you out there, and we need you to keep building a better world. So I salute what you're doing.
Thank you. Oh, we have one last question from Hannah. You can see it in the chat box. Do you want me to read it out loud?
I'm seeing chat. Okay, here we go. Yeah, does this, just for the purposes of the audio here, I'll read it. Does the StoryMap app keep track of analytics or track user behavior? Yeah, very good question. Inside ArcGIS Online, which is actually where these things live, let's oh gosh, I've got way too many tabs, right, folks? But let's ditch a few of these and go back to the story maps location, where you've got so let me go back to the My Story Zone. And this is always great. It remembered that I was logged in here. Great, that's wonderful. So here, you've got this, and I ditched it before I saved, so I've got some broken issues. But you've got a little bit of analytics in here inside ArcGIS Online. So My Story Zone. Inside ArcGIS Online, you have further capabilities. So sorry, I'm not signed in to this tab, so let me go there. You've got further capabilities of number of views, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to go to content, and I didn't share mine with anyone, so I'm the only one that actually viewed it. But let me scoot some of these Zoom windows aside. If I go to this, a couple of these maps here. See, you got this, which is kind of boring because no one viewed it but me, and I didn't share it. But also, you've got, if you want to go deeper, you've got a lot more capabilities in something called the ArcGIS Dashboard. So the dashboard, if you set up a dashboard, it'll give you, as the name implies, lots of different widgets and meters to keep track of usage and where they're from and all those kinds of analytics. So out of the, just straight without building anything, you've got kind of basic stuff. But then if you want to build more, we've got that operations dashboard that you can actually use for this purpose too.
Thanks.
You bet. And let's just show you what some of those things look like.
I mean, we can just type it in if you prefer.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah. So you'll see some examples in there with graphs and charts and so on. Now, this is kind of a grim topic right here, the drug overdoses. Anyway, that's here, Arizona Disaster Mitigation Project. That might be more appropriate. Anyway, the point is, yeah, no shortage there.
Is dashboard available for any ArcGIS Online users?
Can any user create a dashboard? Yes.
yes,
That just a small qualification there. You might have users that don't have much publishing privileges. There's a whole zone that gives you a lot of power. Like, okay, in your organization, who's the administrator? Who can create content? Who can just view content? So not everybody that is in your organization necessarily can do this, but if you're a publisher, yes.
I have a question.
Yep. The clarification. I think for real. And Joseph is unmuted. I'm not sure.
Yep, I'm hearing you.
Not you. Okay, sorry, never mind. That's Julie.
Julie, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, I wanted to ask, this is very kind of boring and technical, but is there an easy way to make two members of a group both owners of a single story map so they can both edit it?
Yeah, first of all, I thought you meant at first my whole presentation was boring and technical.
Oh,
I'm
no.
like, oh man, I thought they were hanging in there. Nobody was like checking their watch or texting.
No,
Anyway.
you definitely had us at Lunchables, so.
Oh, thanks. And my songs, I hope, helped. Anyway, no, we won't go there. Okay, so yeah, you're touching on something that we hear occasionally. At the present time, the way that story maps are interactable or with users is there are a couple ways to collaborate, but what you're asking about is not really the way that they're set up. So in other words, how do I create a map and have someone else be able to edit it at the same time? You can't really do that with the way that the system is set up, because it's all about named users and accessing content and so on. That said, though, even though you can't both log in and edit a story map at the same time, you can do a couple things. You can create a survey where you're having multiple people populate that survey, and that survey feeds into your story maps. So you're getting input from, citizen scientists and could be just researchers in your own organization. So that your story map is pointing to that editable layer. Or you can create an editable map layer, and people are editing a map layer, like they're editing, I don't know, buildings or water wells or fire hydrants or something like that you folks are working with. And that story map points to that editable map layer. But in terms of both editing the story map like we were doing right now, or in this session, where you're both changing the content and you're changing the settings, no, you can't do that at the present time. For one thing, you're going to get into versioning issues, even if it is become possible someday, which it may well be. I don't have all the tea leaves, but it may be possible. But then you're going to have to, how do you coordinate it with that user where you're not? It's kind of like when you're doing a Google Doc and you're both editing at the same time. It's like, I see your changes and I'm going to change your changes. Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting, but right at the present time, there are ways to collaborate. You can have a Google sheet, and that populates your story map. So, there's ways to kind of do it, but not directly with what you're saying. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
You could share a login, but I don't recommend doing that.
Are there ways to create a copy of your story map so you can create multiple versions?
Yeah, how are you going to merge them together, though? That could be a challenge. But I'm glad you're thinking creatively.